Ty Hudson's on the line talking Arkansas football. The Razorbacks are just about 10 days away from their spring game on April 17th. Red and white trying to improve on 3-7, although that was leaps and bounds beyond what we saw out of the Hogs the two previous seasons under Chad Morris. I see here where there's some news that came down today or in the last couple of days regarding the Utah game being moved by a year, and to a larger degree, just looking at Arkansas's future opponents outside of the conference. Of course, everybody's jacked up about the Texas game. You've got some dates against the likes of Oklahoma State, Memphis, Notre Dame. Of course, that was supposed to be played this past season. Tulsa's in the mix. That's a familiar foe from years gone by. Your thoughts about future opponents and the strategy there?
Well, I'm probably a little old school in that area. I really prefer I get the attraction of playing someone like Texas, right? I mean, that makes total sense. It's a former Southwest Conference rival. That makes sense because you recruit out of the state of Texas. I prefer to play where you recruit, and that's just something that, even though Houston Nutt never really came out and said it, I think that was kind of part of his philosophy to a degree. Try to play, local. It wasn't very often, or, I don't know that we've ever played. I don't know the history between Arkansas and Utah. I don't know that there is no history between Arkansas and Notre Dame. And I get that's a big deal for fans. It's a win for fans. I'm just so recruiting minded. I'm like, well, let's just play where we're going to recruit. Let's play. I'd love to play Oklahoma State in their backyard, or go to Norman, Oklahoma, play OU, go to Texas. I'm on the fence about playing that game down in Arlington, playing A&M down there, whether or not they should keep it or not. But I like to play opponents that are within your pipeline, and but also it's a good one. The fan side of me is like, yeah, no, actually that's pretty cool. You're going to get the opportunity. How often do you get to say we get to play Notre Dame? That's a big deal. That's really neat. But the other side of me, the analytical side of me, is like, yeah, but man, what does that really do for the program in terms of recruiting? Then there is the other argument that, players want to play against these kind of opponents. So maybe it is a recruiting advantage to play outside of already the toughest schedule in college football. It's the toughest grind. I know you've got a lot of Big Ten following, but maybe it's a biased argument, but I think the SEC is the toughest grind in college football. But maybe players want those games outside of the conference. So to me, whatever works, whatever helps recruiting, whatever gives you the advantage, I suppose. But I would much rather play, like I said, Oklahoma State, try to keep relationship. We've played Texas, or we've played TCU. We've played Texas Tech in the last 7 or 8 years. I like that idea. Brett Bielema, that was something that he wanted to do too, was stay in that state. And I think that was a pretty smart approach, until he burned his bridges with the state. But I'd prefer that they would keep it local, or at least within, the states around you to some degree. But it just, whatever helps with, I guess, I know that network deals matter, and TV, people watching the games matter. And that's obviously some revenue you don't want to miss out on. I understand that too.
The SEC is the best conference. That's my opinion. And I think it's pretty able to substantiate that. I don't think there's difficulty in doing that. Therefore, it becomes the most difficult grind, especially when you're playing in the tougher of the two divisions. The scheduling formula is generally for a school like Arkansas to play one Power 5 out of the 4 non-conference games, and the other games are generally group of 5 or maybe an FCS every so often. So based on your approach and what you would like to see them do, I think Notre Dame's a different deal. They're one of a few schools across the country where I think you take that opportunity because, like you say, even though it's not where you recruit, Indiana, Notre Dame's really not about being in Indiana. It's just a different deal to a certain extent. But taking your Texas approach, the Texas game matters. Like you say, there was a home and home with Texas Tech and TCU in the past 6 to 7 years. Do you go not just Baylor in that conference, but the group of 5s that you fill in, go after Houston, go after SMU, try to pick those up, and you stay in Texas and Oklahoma to a large extent?
I think so. I'm perfectly okay with that. I mean, I guess, then everyone's opinion it differs now because you're talking about non-P5 schools. You're talking about like SMU and who cares about those programs? But it's nice to say that, hey, look, we're playing in front of friends and family down in Texas or whatever the case may be. Of course, a lot of those games, you'd have to leave the state to play anyways. So maybe you keep SMU at home, but maybe you could schedule, like you said, a Baylor, bring Texas Tech back. I really like that Texas Tech and TCU series. I thought those were both really fun games. The fans loved it. Kind of brought back old school fans like my dad, my uncles, and other older family members thinking about the old Southwest Conference days and getting a chance to take those opponents on again. Of course, like you mentioned, we have Texas coming up this year. We also have Rice to kick things off with in 2021. So you're going to get a little bit of that feeling back of the old Southwest Conference, which in its time was a pretty solid conference. But yeah, I'm so analytical about that stuff. I want every recruiting advantage you can get. And I think the approach of play where you recruit where you play is pivotal when you're going outside of the state of Arkansas. You need every advantage you can get because there's only 3 million people in the state of Arkansas. We're mostly rural. I mean, I just got done driving all through South Arkansas coming up from Florida. Not a lot of big time football being played down in that part of the state. So you need to be able to go to these other places and play in front of these kids, play in front of their families, and build that pipeline, make it even stronger. But, you don't necessarily have to play there, I guess, to build a strong pipeline. But that's kind of my take on it, though. I think it's again, you just need every advantage that you can get. I know I get pushed back on this when I bring it up on my show. People are like, yeah, but it's Utah. They're a pretty good program, or like you said, Notre Dame. And I do think that's a special game. I really hated that one got canceled, but or maybe even taking on someone like a Michigan or Miami, playing them again. Of course, Arkansas played them in a couple of times back in the 80s, did not go in Arkansas's favor back then, but it was still, my dad actually went to that game down there and he said it was really fun atmosphere. So it's also given Arkansas fans a chance to sample opponents, big time Power 5 opponents outside of your own conference. So there is that aspect of it too.
Arkansas's 22 schedule. This is intriguing, being that there's not a Power 5 on the schedule, but 3 of the 4 non-Power 5s are Cincinnati, BYU, and Liberty. So a sneaky, tough schedule void of a Power 5 team. Yeah,
I'm still waiting to see if that one changes a little bit. I don't know. It is sneaky good. It's one of those, you just don't take anybody for granted type of schedules, right? I mean, you've already got the tough gauntlet of the SEC, and oh, by the way, you've got these programs that are really on the up and up, and good luck. It's exciting. I mean, I'm all for it, but I know there's some fans that aren't. And then, of course, the other side of this argument too is why isn't Arkansas playing UCA and Arkansas State? If you're going to play these schools, of course, you got Pine Bluff coming up, and they did. They're gonna play. It's the scheduling issue is one that it's a heated debate here in the state of Arkansas. You've got people that only want to play cookie cutters, play the Tulsas, play the Louisiana Lafayettes, and then you've got people like me who want to play where you recruit, and you've got people that want to play nothing but difficult teams like the Baylors or Notre Dames, and chalk that up to your whole, making your entire schedule already even more difficult than it is, which is hard to believe that you could do playing in the SEC. But it's 2022 is interesting. I think this year's interesting with what they have coming up. Let's just hope Arkansas's got they bring their A game. They can't take a week off this year.